This episode of Gators Breakdown is brought to you by Eagle Energy, a quick, simple, and energy boost on the go. Try the plant-based caffeine inhaler at eagle.energy. And also brought to you by MyBookie. Go bet with MyBookie. Sign up at mybookie.ag and use promo code Gators, and they will match your deposit dollar for dollar. Bet with MyBookie.
Gators Breakdown, the Gators fan podcast, because there's never a dull moment in Gator Nation.
The Gators Breakdown podcast is ready to go. I'm your host, David Waters, and you can find me on Twitter at GatorDave_SEC. Of course, with the big Florida-Georgia game coming up, we have plenty to discuss. So to preview this top 10 matchup, the guest list this week is primed for the biggest game of the season, with ESPN College Game Day coming to Jacksonville for the rivalry game. The host of Game Day, Rece Davis, will join in as we get his thoughts on this game as the Game Day crew is coming to my city. Then a friend of mine, former Gators tight end and co-host of Pigskin Radio on ESPN Coastal out of Georgia, Ben Troupe, joins us here on Gators Breakdown. And lastly, to get the Georgia side of things, Mike Griffith from DawgNation.com previews the Bulldogs. So a jam-packed episode is coming your way. But before we get there, remember you can find Gators Breakdown on news4jax.com/Gators Breakdown. There you will find all the Gators Breakdown episodes as well as articles from the News4Jax sports team and of course all the Florida-Georgia coverage to keep you entertained and informed for the big game. So if you're coming into Jacksonville or already here, tune in to WJXT, News4Jax, and news4jax.com/Gators Breakdown for everything Florida-Georgia game. Also listen to Gators Breakdown on iTunes, Google Play, YouTube, and Spotify. And when using those services, please share, rate, and review the show. Let Gator Nation know what they're getting with Gators Breakdown. And on social media, follow Gators Breakdown on Twitter and Facebook at Gators Breakdown. Let's get this started with the host of ESPN College Game Day, Rece Davis. Rece is in his fourth year as host of College Game Day and joins us here on Gators Breakdown to preview this big top 10 matchup between the Gators and the Bulldogs. A week after one of the crazier game day scenes in Pullman, Washington last week, Rece, I tracked it, and it's a 2,761-mile, 41-hour drive from Pullman, Washington to Jacksonville.
And we've got people who made that drive. Our bus driver, Bobby, and our truck drivers led by Tommy Marshall, they made the drive out to Pullman, and as soon as they got everything loaded up, they started making their way to Jacksonville, and those guys do an unbelievable job every week in making sure that everything is all set for the people when they come out for game day, and they're part of our team and our family, and we're grateful for the hard work that they do and the road trips that they take. I've always said one of these days I'm going to go from one side to the next with Bobby on the bus. I'm gonna pull a Madden or a Kornheiser and just stay on that bus for the week, going from one site to the next.
It's Game Day's first trip to Jacksonville since 2005 and fourth time overall. Rece, you have a working history in the state of Georgia early in your career, so I'm sure you know what this Florida-Georgia rivalry is all about.
Well, I grew up in the South and SEC country, so certainly I understand it. Remember the great games from when I was a kid, and then certainly the ones in more recent years, and the Urban Meyer years at Florida and the Mark Richt years at Georgia, and Coach Donham was at Georgia, and Coach Spurrier obviously had his way with the Dogs in that series. So yeah, I'm very familiar with the series and what it means and the intensity of it, and obviously it feels like old times a little bit this weekend with the stakes being what they are. Kentucky still certainly will have something to say about who wins the East, and they have a game against Georgia coming up and already owning the win over the Gators. But, I think that it's still a pretty good proposition, pretty good prop bet that the winner of this game will have a great opportunity to represent the East in the SEC championship game.
A year ago, 4-7 for these Gators, and now this week we get a top 10 matchup for this rivalry game. Also a year ago, where we're getting reports of Jim McElwain being let go right before this game. And now this week we're discussing how much Dan Mullen has brought energy and confidence back to this Florida program.
Well, Dan's a great coach. And I know we throw that term around a lot. He's a great coach. He's a great coach. They're all great coaches, but they're not. There are really good coaches and there are really outstanding ones. And Dan is in the upper category, in my judgment. What he did at Mississippi State should not be underestimated. And it's not that you can't win with consistency at Mississippi State. It's just that it's really hard. History has proven that it's a difficult job to win consistently. And he really built a great infrastructure there, relentless effort. He has a keen eye for talent and for finding guys that he can develop. And he understood how he needed to do that at Mississippi State and did just a tremendous job. The other thing I think that he does well that has been really on display at Florida is that he adapts to his personnel and finds what works and what will be most beneficial for the players that he has. Now, he has a system. I'm not suggesting he's just willy-nilly saying, hey, let's see what this guy can do. Okay, we'll change everything. But he's very adaptable and very smart. And because of that, I think you've seen a growth in Felipe Franks. All of their stats, and Todd Grantham gets credit for this too, and Florida's players and their defense has been pretty good. But, they're not exactly stonewalling the run, but they're forcing turnovers and they're getting sacks and, they're making big plays. They're getting fumbles. They're pulling the ball out. They're finding a way to make every phase of the game work together. The offense, the defense, the special teams, and while they might not be overwhelming from a talent standpoint in any of the categories, though certainly there are some terrific players. Chikai Polite's having just a great season. But I think that you look at this and you're seeing a developing belief, a developing confidence. It's making this Florida team very dangerous and one that has improved regularly.
Absolutely. Rece Davis from ESPN's College GameDay joining us here on Gators Breakdown. And Rece, as we move to the other side, Georgia's coming off of a loss to LSU, and now questions are arising about this year's Bulldogs team. Is there maybe an overreaction to Georgia's loss in Baton Rouge a couple weeks ago?
Yes. Just to put it candidly, yes. Now, I do think that there are a couple of things that do have merit in terms of questioning Georgia or where are they right now. I'm not sure that they have handled the entire quarterback situation in the very best possible way. Jake Fromm proved a lot last year, and he's a really good player. Now, Justin Fields is a talented guy, and if you're going to be an elite program, then this is the way it goes. You recruit guys who will have a chance to beat out the incumbent. So that position is unique, and what you guys at Florida experienced for all of those years, running, Jesse out there for a play and then putting in old Rexy and maybe Noah Brandeis and Doug Johnson, just rotating guys in and out. That worked because Steve is a genius and because he had a particular method with quarterbacks that would resonate, and he handled them a certain way and they knew what to expect. Now, I'm not in practice every day with Georgia. I can't tell you whether it's that way or not in practice, but I think that in most situations from all of the years that I've covered this and all the years I've grown up watching football and playing very poorly at the at the high school level and below, quarterback is a unique position. And if a guy is looking over his shoulder, rare is the guy who can play that way. And I get the sense that Jake has been looking over his shoulder a little bit, maybe with good cause, because Justin Fields is really talented. And it's speculation. No one knows for sure what type of an impact that might have had on their offense up to this point, but it seems to have had an effect on, at least on Jake's level of play. And then, running Fields out there for 8 plays or 2 plays and primarily running him when everybody that I keep in contact with in Athens, they rave about his passing ability. So I wonder if that is the October surprise for the game that we are no longer allowed to call the cocktail party. Is it that they're going to unleash Justin Fields' arm? Or will it be that Jake Fromm, who I think is a really, really good quarterback, will kind of step up and make plays. Jake didn't play well against LSU. I think he'd be the first to say that he didn't play to his capabilities. I think he's a very capable, very good quarterback, and he didn't play like that. Now, LSU had a ton to do with that, but I do think it has invited this speculation among Georgia fans and maybe even in some places on the outside that Justin Fields is going to come in and all is going to be right with their offense. You know, that all of that remains to be seen, and it remains to be seen how Jim Chaney and Kirby handle it on Saturday.
Rece, there's a theme going around, and Gator fans would definitely want me to ask you this. Do the Gators get enough respect for beating LSU?
Everybody wants respect. I mean, nobody even remembers who Rodney Dangerfield is, and you know, here's the funny thing about fans, I think, and it's great because we have the best fans in all of sport, and I don't offer that up. We meaning college football, we have fans for whom it matters more than any other sport. Now, that can be not the healthiest thing, I know it, but it can, you know, we have a higher percentage of fans in our game that take it with them, you know, the wins and the losses. So when someone on shows like ours, when they don't say what fans agree with, or that, you know, that team is the greatest when they win a game, then I always hear, well, you don't give us any respect. And then, but at the same time, a lot of those fans are the ones picking apart their own team on message boards, you know, but they just don't want anybody else to do it. So like it's like a family thing, right? You know, I can criticize my brother-in-law, but you better not, you know, that kind of thing. And, you know, so I think they have, to be honest. I think they've gotten a lot of respect for beating LSU. I don't know what more you could want. I mean, they're ranked in the top 10. They're way ahead of schedule. I think they're performing at a very high level, and I think that I think that win has been greatly appreciated.
All right, Rece, I definitely have to ask you this now. So, what goes behind Lee Corso's headgear, and what can you share? When does he usually make his decision? Is it right then and there? Is there a lot of prep time for that segment with the schools to get those props that he needs to make that oh so famous pick?
There is prep time, but we're not always privy to it unless we're involved with it. He has a very close group of confidants who help him put all of that together. And unless Herbie maybe is involved in the script or something that he sets out, that he starts on early in the week, none of us know. You know, maybe we get a little bit of a hint from something that's said or something that we might catch a glimpse of in the office. You know, you see some prop that shows up in the office or something like that, or you see somebody trying to hide it as they walk by. You might get a hint, but that is a closely guarded secret on virtually every week on which way Coach is going to go with that headgear pick.
Awesome. And last thing here, can you see this Florida-Georgia game for years to come in this matchup? Do you see it maybe becoming like an Alabama-LSU or Alabama-Auburn where the stakes are bigger than just winning the division but playing for something even bigger?
I think I can see that. Now, I'm not sure that anyone ever is going to duplicate what Alabama has done and is doing right now. Because it's never been done, in my judgment, in the history of the sport. This is the greatest run in the history of college football. So to suggest that, you know, either Florida or Georgia will necessarily be at that level is crazy. I mean, the number still stands that since the beginning of the 2008 season, that's a full decade of football, Alabama has played exactly 3 regular season games in that entire time span in which the national championship has been out of play. 3. That's unfathomable, and they all came in the 2010 season. So, you know, I don't know that anyone will reach that level. It doesn't mean, and don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm not saying that Florida or Georgia or whoever can't beat Alabama. They certainly can. I'm talking about over a long span. But I think the best way I can answer that is that more years than not, as long as Dan and Kirby are at Florida and Georgia, and I would anticipate that's going to be a stable situation both places for quite some time, they're going to play for championships and larger stakes than the division more times than not. And the truth of it is, they're playing for bigger things now. There's still a long way to go for whoever wins, but whoever wins the game on Saturday afternoon is on track, is on course for the college football playoff. The only little pothole in the road would be Florida still needs a little help against Kentucky. But then they might actually get that from Georgia the following week. But that's that's a long view. I think both teams would be well served to just focus on trying to win this rivalry game. And then if they do, like, what Dan said it this week, you get to play bigger games when you win big games, and you earn your way into playing big games. And both teams have done that up to this point, and the winner will earn the right to play even bigger ones down the road.
All right, that's Rece Davis from ESPN's College Game Day joining us here on Gators Breakdown. You can catch College Game Day at 9 a.m. Eastern in Jacksonville this week for Florida and Georgia. Rece, thank you so much for joining me here.
My pleasure.
There you go. College Game Day here for Florida, Georgia at Metropolitan Park at 9 a.m. Eastern. Arrive early, and you may need to bundle up as the weather is supposed to cool down a little bit for Saturday. 9 a.m. Eastern, Met Park, College Game Day, and SEC Nation will be in Lot P as well for this matchup with the Gators and the Bulldogs. All right, you might need, if you're getting there early for Game Day, SEC Nation, getting to the cocktail party early, hey, you may need some energy. And we got that with Eagle Energy. And as you guys know, I'm always on the go. I love spending time with my wife and 4-year-old daughter with a full-time job as well, in addition to what I do here on Gators Breakdown. But during football season, especially this weekend, Florida, Georgia, it's a busy, busy, fun time. You're traveling to games, tailgating, watching all these things. It adds up, and I need to be alert and ready to go. And that's why I'm a big fan of Eagle Energy. Eagle Energy is a plant-based caffeine inhaler that provides an effective and fast-acting energy boost via inhalation. I've done the energy drink dance, but Eagle Energy is the way to go. No sugar, no calories, and the effects only take a few minutes with no jitteriness or that sudden crash. So on these busy game days or in your busy life, give Eagle Energy a try. Visit eagle.energy to learn more or to try Eagle Energy. That's eagle.energy to try a natural, longer-lasting caffeine solution. Eagle Energy. Energy reformed. And of course, watching football is fun, but it's more entertaining when you have some action on these games. Guys, you've heard me talking about this for weeks, and some of you are still on the sidelines. Whether you're an expert or rookie, you should be betting at MyBookie. There's so much to bet on. The World Series, basketball, hockey, primetime fights, and more. I recommend MyBookie because I really trust them. MyBookie has been in business for years. They've got great online reviews, and their mobile site is easy to use. MyBookie is offering a 100% bonus for the last time this year. That's right. Have you been thinking about placing a pick all season, but you haven't got a chance yet? Well, it's time to make your move. After Sunday's kickoff, you can kiss that bonus goodbye. Also, make sure to follow MyBookie at BetMyBookie on Twitter or Instagram. They personally respond to every mention and every DM. Not to mention that they've given away nearly $10,000 in free money to their followers this football season. You'll be the first to know as soon as new odds and props are posted. Log on to MyBookie right now. Don't miss out on your last opportunity to collect the industry's biggest bonus. Use promo code Gators and you'll get your first deposit matched 100%. That's promo code Gators. You play, you win, you get paid with MyBookie. It's Florida Georgia week, and there was only one player I thought of when I want to discuss this game, and that is my good friend Ben Troupe. Ben, I think you and I have the same degree of dislike for these dogs. Different, but the same degree. We both grew up in Georgia around their fans, but you decided to go to Florida, and the rest is history. Ben, for you and me, this is our game.
Absolutely. I mean, you couldn't say the best, Dave. I mean, I grew up in southeast Georgia, Swainsboro, G8, and I moved to Augusta, Georgia. Got recruited by both Georgia and Florida. Actually, my last 2 visits of my 5 visits, I went to Georgia my 4th visit, and I went to Florida my last visit. And I think, and this is my naiveness, being 17 years old and understanding that how many resources that these institutions have. I didn't know that Georgia knew I was going to Florida my next, because they kept saying, listen, you don't got, they kept telling me, why go down there? You're sitting here with us, you can go ahead and commit to different things, but it's Jim Dunnan versus Steve Spurrier. So I think I definitely made the right decision, but I just enjoy this week. I enjoy this game. I enjoy the fact that, both fan bases are into it, both teams in the top 10, both teams got everything on the line. And, hey, man, we got embarrassed a little bit last year, man, but, different year, different coach, different culture. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we go back, Ben, 2002. You caught the game-winning touchdown. And then look, that's one of my personal favorite games of all time. Game day was there, just much like they are this year. It was a night game, the last night game in this rivalry. I took a trip down with a lot of my Bulldog buddies, and hey, look, I even got on TV during game day because I was the lone Florida fan and a group of Georgia fans. So that was kind of a neat thing to see. And the game rolls around, we see screen pass. The Florida screen pass Georgia to death, and lo and behold, toward the end of the game, you catch the game-winning touchdown.
Yeah, you know what? The whole thing about that, I don't think none of those things transpire if Taylor Jacobs don't get hurt in the first quarter. Him and Rex Grossman had a real nice rapport that year, and rightfully so, man. Taylor Jacobs, one of the best receivers I ever had the pleasure of playing with. But he goes out, and like you mentioned, man, that ghost screen, for some reason, I was at the point of attack, either me or Aaron Walker, and they just kept lining up on the inside of us, and I'm thinking to myself, dude, y'all not going to be able to stop this. The only guy that can make the play, is the guy in front of me, but early fourth quarter, we had a nice drive. Thomas Davis, all-pro Thomas Davis that plays for Carolina now, he was lined up right on top of me, which in the tight end, that never happens. It's definitely, especially if you're a receiving tight end like myself. And I was able to get a great swim move off the line, and Rex kind of threw it up like an alley, man. I was able to come down with. I was so tired because there was a long, drawn-out drive, and I give all the credit. Number one, three things. Number one, our defense. Because that was early in the fourth quarter. Terrence Edwards, which never happens, dropped that big, he dropped a big touchdown catch, I think. And obviously Gus Scott, man, being from Jacksonville, him getting that big pick six against DJ Shockley. So a lot of things, not just my catch, but I was definitely happy to have that moment in time.
Yeah, I think Georgia was like 1 of 11 or 1 of 13 or something on third down or something in that game. Too, yeah, you're right. And I won't ever forget DJ Shockley coming in and that Gus Scott interception too. That definitely was a big play of the game. And hey, look, Georgia's going through that quarterback thing again this week, so maybe something like that happens again, Ben.
Oh, I would love it. I know everybody was talking about, how Jake Fromm had his worst game of his career against LSU, and obviously Justin Fields. I always say that Jake Fromm is the guy who's there, but I think Justin Fields is the one, that they really, really coveted, and he seems to be a super duper talented young man. And hey, man, if we get Jake Fromm flustered like I hope we do, and they put Justin Fields in, while he does have talent, I love our cornerbacks. I love what Steiner, and Stewart is doing, man, back there in the safety position. I just think that it plays in our favor. And Dan Muller, he's not crazy, man. He's like, listen, I'm preparing for both dudes. Y'all not going to have me thinking you got a 5-star behind a 5-star, but just one of them got wheels. So I'm looking forward to the matchup, man. And you mentioned it, man, that having two guys, hopefully one of them gets flustered and you bring in the second guy, because Justin Fields said he's not feeling the pressure, but this ain't Saturday and he ain't felt that energy yet.
Exactly. Hey, Ben, we talked back at SEC Media Days, and you brought up Dan Mullen knows what it takes to win at Florida and that he was the right guy for the job. But Mullen, we go back and look at it, we also discussed that this may take a little bit of time, but look, he's ahead of schedule right here, right now, and Gators are top 10 going in this game.
Yeah, I still think it's a learning curve. He's done an incredible job. Took him 7 games to get bowl eligible. This time last year, we don't know what's going on in the head coaching position. We don't know what's going to happen, going into the Georgia game, especially coming out. But Mississippi State is what it is because of Dan Mullen. They are on the map because of Dan Mullen. You look at some of the guys in the NFL right now, and Dak Prescott and those guys. Dan Mullen had something to do with them becoming the players they became. And I love Felipe Franks. I think he's a guy that has tremendous ability, but I don't know if Max Mullen knew how to get the best out of him. Dan Mullen was like, okay, I'm looking at this guy, I see what he does well, so let me cater to his strengths. And so far, so good, man. You look at the touchdown to interception ratio outside of Tua, who doesn't have any interceptions. It doesn't get much better than what Felipe is doing. And I just think that winning makes players buy in more than anything. Because Ty Grantham, as much as Dan Mullen's doing great, I think Grantham is doing an incredible job with this young defense. We're losing a guy like Marco Wilson. That's hard to replace when you're talking about him and CJ. But I just think that as a whole, Dan Mullen understands, man. Look, man, after we lost to Kentucky, he said, I'm going to see who's going to have the pouty face. I'm going to see who's going to be walking around here feeling a certain way. So I appreciate the fact that, he doesn't cater to anybody. If you're good enough, you'll get out there. And if you're not, you got to watch the other guys play.
And, Ben, it's funny how things changed back at SEC Media Days as well. You and I also discussed that it was Georgia in the East and then everybody else. Well, Ben, here we are, Florida-Georgia week, and the Gators have a chance to upset that narrative.
Absolutely, man. I think that the greatest thing happened for my Gators is the fact that, listen, you stand up at a team that came up a play short of not just winning it all. They won the SEC, but winning the national championship. No greater barometer than somebody in your division on your side that seems to be at a superior level. Now, we're a year removed, and it's hard to replace all those guys that Georgia had last year on defense, as well as two of the best running backs ever on offense. But I think that's what the barometer is. You go into the season saying, listen, we got to win those, crossover games, but we got to dominate the East. Obviously, we got off to a slow start against Kentucky, but I think that's what we needed. And listen, I still think Georgia's an incredible team. They're not the same team they were a year ago, but I think Dan Mullen, who's last time he was good, he was calling the plays, going up against a team that he knows how to go, knows how to defeat or knows how to game plan for it. I take nothing from what Georgia did last year, but I think it was the greatest motivator. Watching those guys almost, thank God they didn't win it all, because I don't know if I could have dealt with that. But I like the fact that those guys are putting pressure on not just Georgia, but on Florida to say, listen, man, we are going to be competing with you guys for years to come. And I like those guys being real good. It forces us to play up to them.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Ben, you brought up Felipe Franks. What are you seeing in the progression of Franks and Dan Mullen's work with him?
I think his progression, him going through his reads. I mean, he's going to have his moments. I think Felipe has to get used to being successful, not just efficient, because he's very efficient with the football. People say, well, he should have just made this throw. He's not taking sacks like he did last year. He's not putting us in bad positions as far as like third down, taking what the defense is giving him. And listen, man, he looks confident. I mean, he looks confident in the pocket. They're not forcing him to be more than what he is. He's not really scrambling as much as I would like. But at the same time, I think his receivers are helping him a lot more. The tight ends are getting into the action. And the running game is definitely something he can lean on. So the biggest thing with Felipe is confidence, poise. And listen, man, he understands that, look, we will go as he goes. I love the defense. I love the special teams. But he has to play efficient football for us to have a shot.
Ben, Troupe joining us here on Gators Breakdown, breaking down Florida, Georgia, and we're talking and breaking down these Gators right now. And Ben, let's go to a position group that you know so much about. You just brought them up a little bit in these tight ends. Hey, look, this is a versatile group of players that are getting more involved in the offense as the season goes on. Seontae Lewis, we've seen Morrill Stevens come on as of late. Kroll throws that throwback to Franks against LSU. This seems to be a group that has a hand in some of the more creative play calls that Dan Mullen has.
I look at the tight end group as similar to the running backs group. It's who has the hot hand that week. You mentioned Pitts, the young guy that we got, coming into the class. Remember Markell and those guys. Even Seontae, he's not getting the catches, but he's that veteran and senior presence in the room. And I just like the fact that everybody's getting involved. Dan Mullen is very, very smart at saying, listen, everybody earns snaps. They don't deserve nothing. You got to earn it. And each one of those guys is playing well. I know what he said about Markell and how, underdeveloped he was when he first got there, and how had he been able to develop quicker, who knows the type of player he would have become. But I think he's playing well. I like the group as a whole. Obviously, Pitts is going to have to get a little bigger. He's more of a pass-catching tight end, which is fine. But I just think that as a group, they obviously earning snaps, but they're a vital part of the offense now, not just blocking, but really getting out there making plays in the passing game. Hey, man, what makes me feel good to see those guys finally being an impact on our offense.
Ben, you just brought up something I want to get your thoughts on it. You bring up, they have a group of tight ends, but there's not one main guy. They have a group of receivers, but there's not really that one main guy. They have a group of running backs, and there's not really that one main guy. How does that go about in building this team? Is that kind of by design by Dan Mullen, or is it just, Florida doesn't necessarily really have that breakout guy? What do you see of why so many guys are really playing a part in this offense?
I think it's brilliance on Dan Mullen's part. I mean, because the thing is, if you gave it to one guy, I think Scarlett and Pete Ryan could definitely be the bell cow? Of course. Do I think, Pitts or Markell or Seontae could be the bell cow? Yeah, but when every person says, look, man, every person has a niche in this offense. Not one person does anything that much better than the next, but you guys got skill sets, and that makes the defense go, okay, we got this guy, or we got him in here at the same time. I think having guys say, look, man, at the end of the day, you just want to play. If I got 60 snaps and I didn't really make an impact on but 2 or 3, I'm going to focus more on making sure that when I'm in the game, just kind of like the backup quarterback for New Orleans. I ain't never seen a quarterback get used like him, but when he comes in, the defense like, oh, okay, is this guy going to pass it, run it, throw it? I think because all these guys got, great skill sets across the board, it forces the defense to say, listen, I don't know if they're going to run it or pass it, because if all I do is catch it, every time I come in, okay, they're going to go, they're going to obviously adjust to that. But if I got a skill set to where you don't know, I think it's brilliant on Dan Mullen's part, because it shows, look, man, outside of the offensive line and the quarterback, we will be interchangeable. You just need to make sure that you're ready when your numbers come.
All right, let's move to the other side of the ball, Ben, before I let you go here. We've talked about the transformation on offense, but this defense and the attacking that they do. You have Polite and Zuniga getting to the quarterback, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and Vashawn Joseph flying all over the field, and the steady player Christopher Henderson. What Todd Grantham has done, really fits the personnel of this defense.
Absolutely, man. Listen, one thing that we can't say, even from the Muschamp regime to the McElwain, even out of Coach Dan Mullen, the defense has always been it's been our staple. And you look at what Todd Grantham has done. Listen, when everybody's saying, listen, we're going from a 4-3 to a 3-4. I said, look, man, we're going to be fine, because the fact that Chauncey was willing to say, listen, man, I'm going to go to that nickel and I'm not going to make no waves. You look at the fact that, you got Rece that finally got back. CC is the guy that don't mind playing it out. And I'll say Polite. I thought going into the season it was going to be Zuniga with what he's done in the past, but Polite, in my opinion, is one of the best pass rushers in the country. And this guy gets constant pressure. I think when you look at from the back end of Stewart and Steiner to what you got with the cornerbacks and CJ and those guys and what Chauncey brings and Rece, I think you got a recipe for a lot of problems for any opposing offense, because what happens is you don't know where these guys coming from. They can blitz, they can cover, they can hit, they can run, they can rush. And if you Todd Grantham, you go home saying, dude, I got everything. I mean, when you talk, because most of the time you have a good pass rush, not so good linebackers. Good linebackers, not so good secondary. I think we good in all parts, and I think what it does is to know that we don't have Marco. And, and people saying we haven't missed a beat, that shows the type of defense we have. I can't wait to get him back next year. But, yeah, man, that defense, man, listen. When offense is on the field, I said, all right, man, let's be efficient. When defense is on the field, I said, look, man, pick your poison, because these boys can beat you in a lot of ways.
All right, last thought here from Ben Troupe before we let him go. Ben, you're up there at ESPN Coastal, up in Georgia, in the Brunswick area, and the South Georgia area, so, of course, a lot of Bulldog talk as well. How do you see the Bulldogs coming into this game, and what do they need to do as they face these Gators?
I think Georgia's going to come in the same way LSU came in when they had to play them. I think they're going to come in really, really mad. Nothing worse than having a bye week after a loss, because you got to listen to it, how bad you are, and how the season may be out of hand if we don't handle business. I think that Georgia's going to come in saying, listen, number one, they're going to try to establish the run. I know they got a plethora of receivers with those guys, but I think with Holyfield, those guys, and Swift, I think they're going to, because they got some road graders up front, I think they're going to try to establish the run. And if they can establish the run, that's going to open up the passing game. They're going to do what they do. I know they didn't do it efficiently against LSU because they had to play catch-up, but they're going to do what they do, man. They're going to try to run the ball with an attitude and try to control the flow of the game. But I think that if Florida can find a way to get them out of that rhythm, it plays in our favor. But if you can't stop the run, it's going to be a long day at the office, man, because you're talking about an average of 6'3", 6'3" on the offensive line, 320 pounds. These dudes are huge. But I do think if Georgia do what they do, it's going to be a long day at the office for Florida. But I think Todd Grantham and those guys looking forward to it. But, yeah, I think it's going to be the same Georgia we've seen. Why try to fix something that's not broke? I just think they had a bad performance against some Tigers.
All right, Ben, the last thought here. Would you say, Georgia was picked, to be a national championship contender. They're still in that race. They were picked to win the SEC East. They're still in that race. But coming in this game, coming off that LSU game, you said there's more pressure on the Dogs coming into this game, and we've seen it build up. Years after years of once Spurrier got there, and we got to beat Florida. We got to beat Florida after Florida goes on the streak there. A lot of the pressure was always on Georgia to end the streak or get a win in Jacksonville. And I think coming into this game, the pressure is on Georgia once again.
Absolutely. I mean, the defending SEC champions, the defending SEC East champion, was in the national championship last year and had the number one recruiting class. Got the number one dual threat quarterback. I think I already got a number one recruiting class coming up for 2019. I think with everything going in their favor, it's hard to handle success. And I think, yes, the pressure is. Because think about it. I mean, Florida was picked to finish, third or fourth in the East, let alone make a bowl. So I think when you look at what's going on, 7 games in, both teams are 6-1. Florida's looking at Georgia saying either you are who you say you are, or you're just a year removed from having a really, really good season. So, yeah, I like the pressure being on them. And it's good for Florida because it shows them, listen, man, if you guys are who you say you are, you want to be the top dog, it's going to be on y'all here real soon, especially if they come out of this game with a W. So, yeah, I like the pressure being on Georgia. It's real similar to 2002. These guys coming in, highly touted. I mean, a lot of postseason aspirations. We was able to put a dent in that, even though those guys still went on and won the SEC and made a big-time bowl game. So, yeah, if you Georgia, hopefully you use the pressure as something that, to help prepare you to play well. But if it's something they can't handle, they will get exposed, and they will get exposed real fast.
All right, former Florida Gator tight end Ben Troupe joining us here on Gators Breakdown, breaking down Florida and Georgia like nobody else can. Hey, Ben Troupe, thank you so much for joining us here on Gators Breakdown, and I'll see you at the game on Saturday.
All right, appreciate it, Dave.
Mike Griffith of DawgNation.com is joining us here on Gators Breakdown. He's covered Michigan State, Auburn, Alabama, Tennessee, and now Georgia in the SEC. Mike, you and I are on the Bill King Show in Nashville every Tuesday morning, so it's nice to finally get to talk some football with you.
Yeah, big game this week in Jacksonville, 2 top 10 teams.
Absolutely. We didn't think that way when the season started, but here we are. We did think that way about Georgia, but not so much about Florida, and yet here we are. Is this your first Florida-Georgia game, Mike?
Yep, it sure is. I'm looking forward to seeing it.
I've been to many, Mike, and there's nothing like seeing that stadium split 50-50 and half doing the Gator chomp and the other half barking like a dog. It's a tradition for college football unlike any other. And I guess on your end, I should have called it Georgia-Florida, right?
Well, I don't worry too much about that stuff, just sort it out in the end.
What has the message been on how this Georgia team needs to bounce back after the LSU loss?
Well, there were some areas that I think had been exposed at different points of the year. Primarily the front seven had some struggles against the run game. Georgia's pass protection looked somewhat susceptible. And, Fromm and his receivers were unable to get on the same page once they got behind. LSU's a different team when you're playing from behind. And, they had 4 turnovers, kind of similar to what LSU did when they went down to play Florida and turned the ball over 3 times against the Gators on the road. So hard to win football games when you're -4 in the turnover ratio.
I'm not trying to question leadership here, but with Chubb and Michelle and Smith gone, and this is the first adversity this Georgia team has faced, who are the leaders that might emerge on this Georgia team?
Well, they put a lot on Jake Fromm, and Jonathan Ledbetter on defense. Nate Patrick is a senior. J.R. Reed, the safety, junior. It is hard when you lose your leaders and you lose your core, and you lose 5 out of your starting front 7, and you lose Chubb and Michelle, the number 2 and 3 all-time leading rushers, and Javon Wims. It's hard. It's hard to have that continuity, and we've seen that at Florida. With some of the guys that have gotten in trouble over the years, when those Florida guys get in trouble and get kicked off the team or suspended. I mean, the Gators aren't the same team, so you see the difference it makes when you're missing key players.
Mike, is all the quarterback talk from Fromm and Fields just that, or is there a legitimate chance we'll see more of Justin Fields against Florida?
Well, I mean, anytime your starting quarterback struggles, the number 2 guy becomes an option. And, Fields is young, though. He's only thrown 1 pass in an SEC road environment. Jake's a lot more of an accomplished quarterback, helped the team get to the national championship game last year as a true freshman. So with 21 starts under his belt, you run a lot more of the playbook with Jake. He's a little bit more of a known commodity where, Justin's an exciting freshman. He's great on those RPOs and brings a different dimension. But, I don't know if you want to necessarily put him into that environment unless you have to.
Whoever it is behind center, it's pretty obvious the Dogs just need to run the ball more, right?
Well, they need to run it more effectively. Elijah Holyfield leads the SEC in yards per carry, but, Swift is kind of the main guy because of the dual element he brings, his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield. And, Swift hasn't been 100% this year. He's been playing through a groin injury, and, that's something that, Georgia has tried to monitor. But he hasn't looked like himself. He hasn't looked like the guy he was last year yet. I would say to this point, the run game has been adequate. But, the downfield pass game has been missing. And good opponents can exploit that. If you can't throw the ball downfield, they're going to creep those safeties up and make life really tough for you in the run game.
I think that run game is important, Mike, because I think if this Florida defense can get to a point where they can get Fromm or Fields into passing situations, then we can really see the pressure this Todd Grantham defense can bring.
Right. And Kirby said that down and distance was going to be the key to this game, and, that's offensively and defensively. So, those early rundowns that you were just talking about, there's a big difference between 2nd and 7 and 2nd and 5.
I've seen at times this season Georgia giving up some yards in the run game on defense. Is this where you see Florida attacking this Georgia defense?
Well, I think Dan Mullen's going to try and play high percentage football, and obviously, as I mentioned, Florida's done such a great job with their turnover margin this year. Dan's not going to want to put Franks in a bad situation. He's going to want to keep him in a positive down and distance situation. So, Florida's got some runners that'll come downhill at you as well. So I think that's really where it starts. And, I know sometimes fans get a little bored with that type of analysis, but the bottom line is, who's going to control the line of scrimmage?
I really do think that this is where this game is won when it comes down to it. But the quarterbacks will obviously play their parts too. Georgia hasn't been the best team at getting pressure on the quarterback so far this season. How do you think Felipe Franks responds to this Georgia defense?
They haven't really brought a lot of pressure. Georgia's played a lot of coverage. They've got a really good secondary. If there's a team strength, it's that secondary. I mean, they're really hard to get behind and really hard to beat. They've only given up a handful of plays longer than 20 yards. I mean, Georgia forces you to be real meticulous and detail-oriented and execute long, sustained drives. They're not going to give you anything cheap. They like to play that too-deep look. So, if Georgia can play the run with 6 guys in the box, I'd say it's going to be a long day for Florida. But they weren't able to do that against LSU. They've had to commit a little bit more against the quality run teams. And, that's why I say a lot of this comes down to how effective Florida is in their run game.
Mike Griffith from DawgNation.com joining us here on Gators Breakdown. How do you see this playing out, Mike? Does Georgia bounce back and play like the top team many think they are? Or either way, is this a dogfight until the end with Florida?
Well, it's a dogfight, but I would ask you the same. I mean, are we going to see the Florida that fell behind Vanderbilt 21-3 or the one that beat LSU 27-19? I mean, both of these teams have had some issues with being consistent. They're both works in progress. Neither one of these teams is polished, ready to go. I mean, I'm still trying to figure out how Florida lost to Kentucky, to be honest with you. Florida's got a lot of great athletes, and they got a lot of swagger and a lot of confidence, and it's fun. It's fun for the SEC to have a program like Florida because the Gators bring so much to the table. Their fan base is so passionate, and it's just a lot of fun, and that's more than anything. I think this is going to be a fun game. I think it's going to be spectator-friendly. I expect big plays, big hits, and big moments, and it's going to come down to, who's able to cash in and make more of those big plays. And, Florida brings a lot of momentum in there with 5 straight wins, and, now Georgia's kind of got their backs to the wall, and, we're going to find out the direction of the Georgia football program and the direction of the Florida football program. Somebody's arrow is going to be pointing up and somebody's arrow is going to be pointing down, but I'll tell you this, David, I think whoever wins this game will win the SEC East division.
Mike, you read my mind. So you don't think Kentucky has much of a chance over the winner of this Florida-Georgia game to win the East?
Yeah, either way, if Georgia suffers a hard luck loss to Florida, I think that'll definitely put some steam in their engine going to Lexington. And if they win and get the ship righted, I think that's going to be the momentum they need. And I'm just not sold on Kentucky at the end of the day. I mean, they go to Missouri as a 7-point underdog for a reason this week.
It might going to be interesting because the Kentucky-Missouri game starts at 4 p.m. on Saturday, so we get the scoreboard watch that game while Florida and Georgia are going at it.
Oh, is there a basketball? Kentucky, they got a basketball game? It's almost basketball season in Kentucky, isn't it?
Yeah, it might be that way after Saturday.
That's when I'll start watching the scoreboard for Kentucky is when it's basketball.
Any final thoughts, Mike? I can't wait for you to see this atmosphere here in Jacksonville.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I've heard a lot about it, and I've covered plenty of Tennessee-Florida rivalry games, and that's always exciting. I guess I guess my thought is, talking to Georgia fans, what I tell them is, this had better be pretty special because y'all are missing out not getting to go to the Swamp. And I know C.C. Jefferson said he'd kind of like to play between the hedges. And I'm a big proponent of games being played on campus. So this had better be special because I think Georgia's missing out on not getting to experience the Swamp, which is one of my very favorite venues to see a football game at. I love the energy there. And Sanford Stadium is pretty amazing as well. So this had better be pretty special for these schools to be hunting a home-and-home opportunity.
I was born in Jacksonville, and I live here now, and I love this game being played here. If they had to play in the Swamp in between the hedges, maybe something like play 2 in Jacksonville and then 1 in Gainesville and then 1 in Athens on a rotation. But hopefully you get to see why the game being in Jacksonville means so much to us here.
Yeah, I look forward to that, David. I've heard nothing but great things.
Mike Griffith of DawgNation.com covering the Georgia Bulldogs. Thank you so much for joining me here on Gators Breakdown.
All right, thanks, David. Appreciate it.
Some great interviews there, getting us ready for Florida, Georgia. But what are my keys to win? Here we go. Let's get off to a good start on offense against LSU. Was it more for Georgia? Was it more of a bad day, or are there bigger issues here, or is it an overreaction for what is still a pretty good team? I think first and foremost, getting off to a good start and talented. Against a young team in Georgia. They're talented, but they're a young team. So, maybe get some doubt in their head coming off of this LSU game. When they were finally popped in the mouth by LSU, they didn't respond too well. So I'm not saying Georgia will fold if Florida jumps up early, but if Georgia is to build some momentum, they can really build off of it. I think they're a big momentum team. They like the big explosive plays on both sides of the ball. So stop this momentum early, stop their momentum early, and muddy this game up if you have to. Get off to a good start. LSU got off to a good start, but it didn't matter as Florida settled down after an early turnover by LSU. Vanderbilt jumped out to a 21-3 lead, but Florida will be hyped for this game. So if Georgia does jump out to the lead, I don't think it'd be because Florida isn't ready. But I think Georgia will want to press to make Florida play from behind. To make Florida play from behind again. This isn't Vanderbilt. Georgia's a different team. So if they can make Florida play from behind, they will. So that's why I think it's imperative for Florida to get off to a good start. Maybe get some doubt in Georgia's head again, as I mentioned, coming off that LSU loss, and see where the game goes. Make them press. Maybe start that quarterback question early if it's really still out there, and make Fromm throw the ball a little bit more, and we'll see where that goes. But also limit the big plays and get Fromm in obvious passing situations. Kind of extending this point in a way of getting off to a good start. Not going to completely stop this Georgia offense, but make them work for everything they get. Consistently get them in third in passing yardage. Fromm is 48% on third down this year, but he has 3 interceptions in third and 10 yards plus situations. So what we saw was Florida able to do against Joe Burrow and the LSU offense when they were able to get them in those situations. Fromm has struggled in spurts of just about every game, so he doesn't seem to be as confident or decisive as a year ago, and he's definitely not as accurate when throwing the deep ball. Look, he hasn't been bad, but he has been inconsistent, not necessarily taking that next leap most expected. So we've discussed these things, this episode, the last episode, of how much we think Georgia will go with more of a running attack and stick with it versus Florida. So get off to a good start, make them play out of it, force this pass, and that's when this Florida defense is at its best. If the Gators can limit the home run type of plays from Georgia, then I like the Gators' chances here. And some things I really want to look at in this game. I'm ready to see the wide receivers versus the defensive backs on both teams. Florida's defensive front pressure needs to be there, as these Georgia wide receivers are big-time playmakers, and they want to hit the pass down the field. Not, as I say, with Fromm, they haven't been hitting it as much as they have last year, but that's what they want to do. They want to get that run game going, hit the play action, hit some plays down the field. I like C.J. Henderson matched up on anyone that Georgia can bring there, but after that, it's been consistent in that second DB spot. So the matchup with how deep Florida goes at wide receiver and how deep Georgia goes at defensive back is another one I'm looking at here. For the most part, Georgia's done a good job at limiting big plays so far this year, and that has a lot to do with the play of J.R. Reed and Richard LeCounte. DeAndre Baker has been the Bulldogs' best overall player this season on defense, and Tyson Campbell's coming along. He's been impressive, but LSU picked on him a little bit, so we'll see if Florida kind of does the same thing here. They can tackle better. The whole Georgia defense can tackle better. But, that defensive backfield has been a strength for Georgia. So with Florida's how deep Florida is at receiver, they don't necessarily have that one playmaker we've talked about, Van Jefferson being that number one, but Florida spreads the ball around to multiple receivers. So it'd be a depth of Florida's receivers versus the depth of Georgia's defensive backs, and that's the one matchup I'm ready to see. Two areas I'm looking at, sacks and red zone production here. And as I said earlier, I think Georgia will get some yards. They're a really good team, so I think it will be imperative to make them settle for some field goals when they do hit on some plays. Like Florida, Georgia is scoring 89% in the red zone. Georgia has scored 19 touchdowns out of 25 scores in the red zone, and they've settled for just 6 field goals. So 25 scores out of 28 attempts, and 19 of those have been touchdowns. So Georgia is doing a good job of scoring touchdowns once in the red zone. The Gators would need to be better here. As for the season, out of opponents' 14 red zone trips, 6 have been touchdowns by the opponent and 5 have been field goals. So now Florida's doing a really good job of keeping opponents out of the red zone with only 14 attempts in 7 games. But they need to clamp down a little bit better once there. Georgia will have their opportunities, I think. They'll have their opportunities in the red zone. Make them settle for some field goals here. And it really does rear its head a lot. When Georgia has to settle for field goals a lot in this game, in this atmosphere, they've missed a good bit of field goals and important field goals in this series and in a lot of the the last 15, 20 years of this game. So now looking at an advantage I think Florida has is this Georgia pass rush and the Florida offensive line protecting Franks. The Georgia defense has only 9 sacks on the year, and as Mike said, they don't bring a lot of pressure. But you expect more from a defense that is currently ranking 117th in the nation in sacking the quarterback. And to take that a step further, they rank 121st out of 129 teams in tackles for loss, with only 14 on the season. So they may not bring a lot of pressure in numbers, but you'd expect a better showing even without bringing numbers with the talent Georgia has. So Georgia only has 9 sacks on the year, and Florida's only given up 9 sacks on the year. So if this plays out this way, with these numbers that we're seeing, this is the defense where Florida can stay on schedule in down and distance situations. Keep Franks upright, run the ball like Florida has, and this is a defense, while not really giving up the big play, can be had for some yards. Avoid turnovers, of course, and Florida can move the ball. I feel pretty confident Florida can move the ball with what we've seen so far, with this Georgia defense. And I'm sure they've worked on a lot of stuff in the bye week, much like Florida has as well. But if it plays out this way, the way the numbers show and the way the numbers say it can, then the Gators can move the ball. Of course, players play the game and not numbers, so we'll see how it goes. But there are some numbers to look out for when looking at some matchups in this game. So here we go. I'm picking the Gators 24-20, guys. I do think Florida can play with Georgia. I expect both teams to be ready and fired up, ready to go. I expect Georgia to start well, and I expect Florida to keep up on offense and respond, and then the game settles down to where Florida's defense takes over. I think this plays out much like the LSU game. Franks makes the important throws, but I do think he hits one big play somewhere along the way. I think Mullen may have a wrinkle to get some guys open, and it'll be up to Franks to make the throw. Hopefully he has time to throw like we just discussed. Special teams may play a big factor in a difference here in a close game. I'm predicting a big first-and field goal late to be the difference, and 24-20 Gators over the Georgia Bulldogs, and Florida moves on with control of the SEC East, with Georgia and Kentucky coming up the next week. So there we go. That's how I see it playing out. And hopefully these Gators can get it done. Should be a fun, exciting game, fun, exciting day here in Jacksonville. Fun, exciting day if you're at home with SEC Nation and College GameDay being on TV. It's going to be a whole lot of fun for this top 10 matchup. Let's take a look around before we finish up here around the SEC in Week 9. Here we go, a noon kickoff. Vanderbilt and Arkansas on the SEC Network. Not much to look at there. Two teams struggling in their respective divisions, of course. Of course, the big headliner, 3:30, Florida, Georgia on CBS. Also, 4 o'clock, like I said, we were talking with Mike about it. There may be a little bit of scoreboard watching bias media in the press box, and some fans as well, as Kentucky and Missouri will be playing around the same time, kicking off at 4 o'clock. And we'll see what Kentucky can bring to the table. They're underdogs at Missouri. So interesting there. The number 12 team in the nation is an underdog on the road. So we'll see how it goes. Kentucky's struggling on offense, and Florida can pull it out against Georgia, and Kentucky loses to Missouri. You'll be looking at your you'll be looking at a first-place team all by themselves with the Gators if they can beat Georgia. Later on that night, Texas A&M visits Mississippi State, number 16 Texas A&M. That's a 7 o'clock game on ESPN. Could be an interesting game. We'll see how Mississippi State responds after that LSU game last week, but Texas A&M's got it rolling pretty good right now. And at 7:30, the last game of the SEC, Tennessee visits South Carolina. Will Muschamp hasn't lost to Tennessee yet in his career at Florida or South Carolina, so can Jeremy Pruitt get another big win like he did a couple weeks ago against Auburn, or will Muschamp keep that streak going against Tennessee? Wow, what an episode. What an episode to preview this Florida-Georgia game. Cannot thank Rece Davis, Ben Troupe, and Mike Griffith enough for all their insight that they could bring here in previewing this big game. Probably one of the biggest episodes I've done so far with all the interviews and breaking down this game. Go back and listen to the last episode as well with Will and I, where you can get even more, if you haven't listened to it yet, even more breaking down of this Florida and Georgia game. So hopefully I'll see some of you guys around Jacksonville when it's all said and done, and the Gators hopefully come out on top. I'm your host of Gators Breakdown, David Waters. You can find me on Twitter at GatorDave_SEC. Guys and girls out there, thanks for listening to this episode of Gators Breakdown. Beat Georgia.